when you're feeding into the commodity market, you have the support of those big four meat packing companies. When you're doing it on your own, you truly are doing it on your own. The system is no longer set up to support the individual American rancher. It's set up to feed these huge oligopoly commodity market systems that we've built. In America right now, 14 cents to every dollar goes back to the conventional producer. Within our market, 50 to 60 cents of every food dollar is going back to our producers. And that's how we make a change, is with the dollar. By encouraging people to vote with their money, to take a stand, to support these small, independent American ranches rather than these industrialized food companies. 95% of life on land lives below our feet within the soil. It's a lot of microbiome, tons of microorganisms. And by feeding this microbiology, by raising healthy plant life, we're able to sequester carbon into the ground.
Okay, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Today we have Zan with us. Zan is coming from Bozeman, Montana. So, Zan, welcome. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Would love to just shout out Memorial Day weekend. I hope everyone had a great weekend, remembered why. We get to celebrate that beautiful weekend. And Dr. Baker, thank you so much for your service. That's worth all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I felt fortunate to be able to serve and help some people out. And I'm like I said, yeah, and there's a lot of people that sacrificed. Obviously, Memorial Day is about the people that were killed to protect our way of life. So I know it's funny because I hear people saying, oh, the military is BS. And there's some good people in there. I got to say, I had some of the best people that I ever met were guys that were willing to stand up and do what they thought was the right thing. Let's get started with your story. So you're here to discuss a success story. So maybe just start from wherever you want to start at the beginning, whatever makes sense for you, and we'll get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really all begins for me in high school, just dealing with a ton of GI issues, attention, focus. I had a series of concussions playing football, hockey, lacrosse, boxing, being a young man. And I was diagnosed with traumatic attention deficit disorder, which I wasn't even familiar with at the time. And right around the same time, I really started experiencing a ton of GI issues, especially with what I was eating. Pretty standard diet, fruits, vegetables, red meat, tons of seed oils. I now learned, looking back on it with the insight I have now. I carried that diet with me into college. Things didn't really improve. It certainly didn't get any better when you introduce hanging out with friends and not having your parents around in college. It downgraded from there. And then after school, I graduated and I was hired by the New York Football Giants to be an analytics intern. So I went back home. I'm originally from New York, went to East Rutherford, New Jersey, and all of a sudden I'm thrown into the world of professional football, living at the facility practically 7 days a week in season, top tier nutrition, incredible people, and still feeling crummy with what I'm eating. And at that point, I don't really know what I'm doing wrong here because I'm trying to eat a well-balanced diet. I've got some of the best food in the world being served to me. We eat with the team. We have nutrition experts who are specifically there to focus on that kind of work. And I can't speak highly enough about that organization. The Mara and the Tisch families, the coaching staff, the players, everyone was incredible to me. But I had unique access to some really smart nutritionists. And I sat down with them. I said, hey, here are the problems that I'm having with my diet. Here's what I've been eating. Here's how I'm feeling fatigue-wise, energy-wise, attention-wise, and then, of course, bowel movement-wise. And one of the professionals there said, let's explore the red meat you've been eating, because that was a real trigger point for me. And what we discovered was that almost all of the red meat I was eating was grain or corn finished. It was industrially raised. And he recommended I try a grass-fed, grass-finished beef diet for 30 days, a strict carnivore diet. And it changed my life. I went from, I was 24 at the time, having all sorts of trouble. And within 30 days, I felt like a completely brand new person. And the season wrapped up soon after that. And I had the opportunity to return to the team in a different role. But I was so moved by the experience I went through and switching over to grass-finished beef and then learning about why that beef was different, not just from a nutritional standpoint, but the way in which it was raised, that I actually picked up, moved to Montana to pursue regenerative agriculture, grass-fed and finished beef, which has turned into bison, pastured pork, chicken, lamb, even wild-caught Alaskan salmon, which I'm sure we can delve into more. But that's the beginning to my story of kind of where I started in terms of what led me to the path to carnivore and how it changed my perception of food and my profession, really.
Let me ask, so what year was it you were recommended by a New York Giants nutritionist to go carnivore? I'm just curious because...
Yeah, it must have been it's 2024 now. I've been here 4 years. So let's call it 2019, 2020. And it wasn't, but certainly I wouldn't say that was the it wasn't the recommendation to the team. It was a recommendation made to me personally by that particular nutritionist. And I was lucky to have access to him. The players handle their own nutrition while they have their advice is recommended to them by the team. Many of them have private chefs, private nutritionists, etc. But that individual nutritionist recommended that I try that diet, and it was super successful for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's relatively early on in the sort of carnivore growth phase, and have a forward-thinking nutritionist that understands that some of these gut issues are particularly helped by shoving more fiber in there in many cases, which what a lot of the gastroenterologists will tell us is interesting. And you said prior to that, you weren't on a carnivore diet, you were on some sort of mixed diet, and I assume, right?
So prior to going carnivore, I was on a typical, pretty standard diet of meat, fruits, vegetables, definitely grains, cereal, oatmeal in the morning, stuff like that. And then as my health downgraded, I went vegetarian. I tried going vegan, and all of these were in 30 plus day stints at least. So it was vegetarian for 30 days. It was vegan for 30 days. It was pescatarian for 30 days. And there's only so many months in the year until you run out of options. And that's what led me to sitting down as an intern at a professional football team. It's a little, you never want to overstep, but I was able to get a moment where I felt confident enough to go to the nutrition team and say, hey, you have a couple minutes to talk to me about this? They said yes. And they said, give it a go. And that's where I am now.
And so my assumption is it helped, right? Where did you go from health-wise to where you are perhaps now?
Big time. It was a huge change. Even from the GI standpoint, it was a night and day shift from going outside and wondering where the next bathroom was to feeling confident and having healthy bowel movements and feeling strong on my feet, to one of the places I noticed the most is in my attention and focus. In high school, I had been prescribed 60 milligrams of Vyvanse and 20 milligrams of Focalin to take daily, which is just too much for me, for sure. And I've completely weaned off those medications. I'm alert, I'm focused, I have incredible energy, and I attribute that almost entirely to my diet and then also to exercise. I think those two things have transformed the way I'm able to think and feel, and the carnivore diet is a huge part of that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that exercise, diet, sleep, I put sleep in there as well, are incredibly important for this. And so that was how many years ago? So you said 2020, so 4 years ago. So you're probably you're in your late 20s now. Is that? And so what are you doing these days? You moved to Bozeman, Montana to somehow get involved in agriculture. So how did that sort of develop?
I moved to Bozeman, Montana, originally Big Sky, Montana. I wanted to get involved with regenerative agriculture. I'm not from an ag family traditionally, so it was a big jump. And it started knocking doors, trying to get a job on a ranch as a hand, just to learn more about the process and what regenerative agriculture was outside of the book learning that I had done. And I was lucky enough in that process to meet some great people. I went to a few farmers markets, and walking around at the Big Sky Farmers Market, I saw a small booth that said RegenMarket up there. And there were two couples working behind the booth, and I approached them to ask what it was they did in the space. And they said they were an aggregate middle market. So effectively, they helped regenerative ranchers and producers sell and market their food. And the ranching industry is it's tireless work. It can be super stressful, and raising super healthy animals and regeneratively is far more difficult than conventional processes. So to add on marketing, sales, fulfillment, distribution it's a big step for a lot of these producers. And we were able to find a great home to help these folks reach those goals without having to overextend themselves. So that's what the business is. And originally I was just the general manager. It was a new business when I found them, and I started working for equity. I was able to work into a small ownership share. And so that's what I do now. I'm part owner of RegenMarket, and really proud of that and the work we do to help producers find great, healthy homes for their food.
Yeah. So RegenMarket is maybe a cooperation of a certain number of ranches, either regionally or what is the overall thing to do with that?
Right now, we're 15 ranches, primarily spread across western Montana. Now, my partner, the Collegiate family, they own Broke Moon Ranch in Idaho. That's a new ranch. They moved down there about 2 years ago, and we have started doing our own regenerative beef, sheep, goats. We raise our own livestock, dogs, hopefully some chickens soon. And so we have extended our reach into Idaho, but primarily our 15 ranches are spread across western Montana, all the way up from Polson out to Bridger and down to southwest Montana here in Big Timber and Livingston. And we work with bison ranches, beef ranches, pork ranches, sheep, as well as chicken. And then we also do raw honey and lentils, grains for those who are not carnivore. And we're really proud of that fact, to be able to bring all those ranches together into one marketplace so customers can come and shop hit one button and have food delivered directly to them.
So you'd mentioned it's harder to raise food in this way than compared to, say, somebody who feeds into the commodity market, where it's put your cattle on grass for 6 months and then send them off to the feed yard to finish out for the next or a year, whatever it is. It varies a little bit. Why is it harder? Why do you feel it's harder? And Montana is a challenging place. There's certainly not grass to graze on in October, November, December, January, February, March, probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So in the winter months, bale grazing becomes a big part of the process. It's harder just in the sense that when you're feeding into the commodity market, you have the support of those big four meat packing companies where you're sending your animals off to the feedlot. When you're doing it on your own, you truly are doing it on your own. The system is no longer set up to support the individual American rancher. It's set up to feed these huge oligopoly commodity market systems that we've built. And our producers, it's more expensive to raise their animals regeneratively, and it's more expensive to finish them out themselves rather than put them on a truck and ship them off to the commodity markets. We take a lot of pride in being able to help producers who want to finish their animals on grass, who want to raise their animals, see that animal through the whole process from start to finish, all the way to a local processor, a USDA certified local processor, which is what we use here in the state.
Geez, it's interesting. I just talked to a friend of mine. He's out in Orange County, California. He's the only rancher in Orange County, and he's completely regenerative. He doesn't even vaccinate. He's never vaccinated his animals, which is pretty unique. Most, even regenerative ranches, they still provide vaccines to these animals. But let me ask you, is there a specific breed that you shoot for? Because one of the concerns around grass-finished beef is it tends to be too lean. It tends to not marble out as well. It's more challenging. Maybe it takes longer. It's instead of the 16, 18 months you might get in a feedlot, you might be out there 24, 28, 30 months finishing out. How do you get around that or do you care about marbling? Because I do. I don't eat carbs, so I got to have fat. So how do we reconcile getting enough marbling in there? How do you do that well?
It's a great question, and it's one we hear often, and it's a mixed bag. You're totally right. Grass-fed and finished beef does not have the marbling you would see in typical conventionally fed and finished beef products. What we have done is we offer two different products. One is traditional Black Angus grass-fed and finished beef. And at the ranch in Idaho, we've now started raising our own Akaushi Wagyu beef cattle, which we're grass feeding and finishing. So we're not doing a feedlot finish on those cows, but the genetics of that species has an increased marbling capacity in the meat. So I actually prefer, and it's different person to person, I prefer traditional grass-fed and finished beef. And I almost think it's a psychology thing where I went from eating unhealthy beef, what I would consider unhealthy beef, to healthy beef. And now that grass-fed and finished flavor, I look for it because it shows me that what I'm eating is good for my body. The Wagyu Akaushi beef is incredible as well, and it has more of that rich, marbling, fatty flavor and texture that people who have eaten conventional beef enjoy. So bringing that product to our market is helping us to reach both crowds, people who want that more traditional lean grass-fed finished beef, and people who want a grass-fed and finished product that tastes like a more conventional beef product.
Yeah, I've seen, I'm interested because obviously the genetics, as you point out, it's not just how you finish, it's the age of the cattle, the breed, the sex, the location, all these things impart different flavors and nutritional changes in nutrition, quite honestly. I don't know if you're familiar with Stefan Van Vliet, Fred Provenza. Stefan's at Utah State. He's been doing a lot of analysis of different beef products and showing that, yes, indeed, beef that's finished on a diversity of forage versus a grain finished beef has different nutritional characteristics, and some people would say they're better. It's depending on how you define that, but that clearly is there. Now, I see people every day that eat grain finished beef and their health gets better. Clearly, they put their diabetes in remission. They put their autoimmune disease in remission. Clearly, there's people that are getting better with that. It's not to say that grass finished beef may not be superior for some people like yourself, but I see both. I just have to be honest. I see both, and I think it's good that it works. What is the outlook with regenerative agriculture in your view? Because you're obviously excited about it and doing it, so you got to be optimistic about it. But I talk to guys like Will Harris, who down at White Oak Pastures, and he's pessimistic. I was bummed out when I interviewed him. He said, "No, I don't think it's going to go. Nobody wants to do it. It's too hard." What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I want to go back to the point you made about grain finished beef, and then I'd love to jump to that. I want to echo that opinion. I think that well-raised beef is a health food product for everyone in this country, and everyone's diet is different. The way it makes people feel is different. I'm an advocate for grass-fed and finished beef because of how it makes me feel personally, but also the difference in the environmental impact that product has. I think that's really where it steps outside of traditional grain-fed beef. But both those products are fantastic, and I'd recommend anyone add beef to their diet. It's an incredible superfood. To speak on my outlook to regenerative agriculture, Will Harris is an icon in our space, and he's certainly far more educated on the microeconomics of this business than I am. And regenerative agriculture, as he said, it is harder and it takes more work, but the product in terms of the quality of life that you give to an animal and the quality of food you can give to a person and how we're able to impact our planet, I think those three points of the triangle, they really stand out to the conventional model. When you can get consumers on board who want to help people, who want to help planet, who want to help animals, you don't need to save the world. You need to save community by community. And I think you start small and grow from there. We have a really fantastic community, especially in Bozeman, Montana, that cares about our people, our planet, and our animals. And we're able to grow exponentially from there. So I would love to say that regenerative agriculture is the end-all, be-all, the cure for ranching and farming across the world. I think there's studies that say that could be the case. There's studies that show that that couldn't be the case. What I'm really focused on is my individual community and making sure people who I love, know, and care about are able to have access to super healthy food that heals them and heals our planet.
Yeah. And are you involved? Because you said you worked as a ranch hand at a point. Are you still actively doing the day-to-day? Are you mostly doing the behind-the-scenes marketing type stuff, or do you actually interacting with the animals on a daily basis?
So my primary role is I do the day-to-day operations of the business. I try and spend at least 4 to 5 days a year at every ranch that we work with to lend a hand, to form a closer relationship with that rancher, and to just get a better understanding of the processes that we work with. My day-to-day job involves going to these ranches outside of that to pick up food and meet people. So I end up spending a lot more time there than that 4 to 5 days. But I make sure that there's at least 4 to 5 days a year where I'm going to the ranch and living that life to make sure I can really speak to our product, speak to the people raising our product, and make sure that I understand the practices that go into everything that we're doing. And I love that part of my job. Don't get me wrong. Working behind a computer has some benefits every now and then, but being outside on my feet, especially in a place as beautiful as Montana, where I'm so lucky to live, it means the world to me. So I try and take advantage of that as much as I can.
Yeah, certainly, because you mentioned you guys not only do beef, but pork and chicken and fish and some of the other things. And certainly when it comes to like how we have industrialized animal agriculture, cows probably, even feedlot cows have it a lot better than, say, pigs and chickens. I think that's probably reasonable to say. And most cows, in contrast to what vegans say, even a feedlot animal is not locked up. They're not in a cage, which they seem to believe. And I've been to feedlots, I've been to regenerative ranches, I've seen all this stuff in person. So I have a little bit of insight in this stuff. But tell me about some of the other things like guys like Joel Salatin and some others, and Will does that as well. There's multi-species grazing. Is that something that a lot of the people that are running, you said pig ranches, but are they multi-species facilities typically? Because that seems to be the most sensible way to do this, because you can use those same acreages for multiple purposes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And pork and poultry in America are two very troubled products. Over 95% of those products in the conventional system are raised indoors their whole lives, never seeing the sun, never being outside. And our operation, specifically our pork operation, is called Olive Branch Pork. The rancher who runs that place is Brian Busing. Brian's an incredible regenerative mind, an incredible thinker, and his ranch is polyculture to a T. Brian not only does hogs, he does sheep and goats as well. He has chickens, and he raises his own livestock guardian dogs. And you'll see all those animals, not the pigs, but you'll see the sheep and the goat out in the same field together. The hogs run by themselves, but they live in a giant grove of Russian olive trees. But the ranch itself is polyculture, and he incorporates all those animals into different parts of his property to make sure that different hooves are trampling different forage, different animals are eating different things. And he's trying to simulate an American prairie to a T. When you look at an American prairie, a traditional Native American prairie, there's over 140 species of grasses in one prairie. There's never one single crop on that ground. And there's, once upon a time in the United States, there were tens of millions of ruminants that would roam that ground, eat different things, trample different forage, tighten up to preserve themselves from predators, spread out when they were running. So we try and simulate all those intrinsic wild behaviors on our properties to feed the microbiome that is under the soil.
Yeah. And is there any incentives? I know we got a political election coming up and people are like, who do I vote for? Do you guys get a sense of any sort of legal or political support for what you guys are doing? Is there anything that we're seeing down the road? Because it seems to me, as we focus on sustainability, whether we want to or not, it's a reality, and carbon credits and things like that. Obviously, you can make the argument that, hey, I'm restoring the soil and putting carbon back in the soil, and there's clear studies that support that. What are your thoughts on what's happening politically around agriculture now? Or do you have any thoughts?
Politics is always a touchy and tricky subject. I respect everyone's decision. That's the beauty of America, is to have the right to choose, to have the right to vote. There is one candidate who's more outspoken in terms of regenerative agriculture and food management. That'd be RFK Jr. He's certainly leading the charge, at least publicly, on those topics. But I think it really starts with the consumer's dollar. As much as it is an individual's vote, the consumer dollar is what changes the landscape for us. In America right now, 14 cents to every dollar goes back to the conventional producer. So 14 cents of every food dollar, that is, goes back to the American producer. Within our market, 50 to 60 cents of every food dollar is going back to our producers. And that's how we make a change, is with the dollar, by encouraging people to vote with their money, to take a stand, to support these small, independent American ranches rather than these industrialized food companies. By taking share away from them, our policy leaders will see that's the movement that American people are choosing to follow, and hopefully they would get back behind that with policy as well. Our elected officials are meant to represent us, so hopefully our food dollars, our personal decisions, would inspire them to back those same companies that our American dollar and our American values are.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and a lot of ranchers bemoan the fact, rightly so, that back 50 years ago when they took an animal to market and it made it to the retail market eventually, a significant amount of that money would go back to the rancher. Now it's been dwindled through the actions of the big four, JBS, Tyson, Cargill, and Marfrig or National Beef, have really shifted all the profit into the processing and retail side. And the ranchers basically, many times they can barely stay afloat, and then and then when things turn bad, they have to sell. So it's a problem. Do you find that? Is there like some program? Because when you talk to many conventional ranchers, they're like, I don't see how I can successfully survive transitioning to regenerative agriculture, because it might take them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to maybe see a profit or see something that looks viable to them. Is there any sort of way? Obviously, you're obviously representing people that have already made that decision, but is there any help for these people that say, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'd like to do it, but I'm scared because I've done it this way for 3 or 4 generations and we don't know how to get there? Is there some resource for those people?
Absolutely. And it's a great question. It's one I wanted to bring up at the end of the call if we didn't get to it. There's an organization we work with specifically in Livingston, Montana, called the Western Sustainability Exchange. It's a 501c3, and what they focus on is helping conventional ranchers make the transition to regenerative agriculture. The costs they can be seen in infrastructure, in reducing feed product, and it takes a long time. Part of being regenerative ranchers is weaning off these synthetic inputs that you're paying for. At the time, if you're a conventional rancher now, you're paying for these synthetic inputs. Weaning off of them, it's not just a overnight process where you go from using nitrogen fertilizer to not using nitrogen fertilizer the next day. You slowly have to transition off of them, and you'll watch an ebb and a flow in your crop yield, et cetera. And so what the Western Sustainability Exchange is in place to do is to support ranchers with grant money, et cetera, who are trying to make this transition and say, hey, we're here to be a helping hand in this process for you. And folks over there like Little Erickson and Chris Mayhus are incredible. They're great advocates for what we do. And the Western Sustainability Exchange has been a huge help in our business in helping to get these ranchers through the finish line of transitioning, at the starting line of transitioning, and then support them from that point on. I can't speak highly enough about that organization. I know there are several others like them around the country, but that is the one that we deal with specifically. And I think those people are truly incredible.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know for anybody, because every once in a while somebody will listen to this. I have a fair number of ranchers to listen to what I do, and I think, as you mentioned, if you're getting 50 to 60 cents on every food dollar, I assume almost all the regenerative ranchers. I guess Will Harris had a thing with Whole Foods for a while, but in general, it's going to be direct to consumer, right? Is that the model that almost all of them are going to follow?
Our model is direct to consumer, and that's what we help the ranches is so we buy their product, we remarket them to the customer, we build markets. So here in Montana, we have almost 200 families that are subscribed to our credit membership model, which I'll explain in a second, how we think that's the best way to support these ranch families. But so we have a network of over 200 families that we directly support. We connect with local restaurants, local organizations. We actually just recently dropped off a ton of grass-fed, grass-finished organic beef to the Big Sky School District, which is an accomplishment we're really excited about, helping get super healthy food into our school system. But our business primarily is direct to consumer. We do local delivery across town. We ship at the moment right now, which is something that I would like, as the business grows, to transition into more of a regional hub model so we can reduce our shipping input and help get regionalized food to hyper-regional areas. But direct to consumer is the primary way we do our business right now. And helping ranchers set up these websites and do fulfillment and packaging and all that stuff, it all comes under our network, and it's a big lift off their shoulders.
What about the other, I'm sure you're aware, the processing part of this piece has been always a sort of a sore point for a lot of people. It's like having access to processors, and obviously the USDA has its advantages in the fact that nationwide distribution is a lot easier. There's prohibitions on shipping across state lines if you don't have a USDA processor. How do you deal with the processing side of things?
So we work with local USDA processing facilities across the state of Montana. There's 3 or 4 that our producers are familiar with, close enough to that we're able to get the animals in a low stress environment from the ranches to the processors. But we don't use any large processing houses. They're all family owned, USDA certified processors. There's actually one in Havre that opened in the past couple of years that's owned by a cooperative of grass-fed beef ranchers up there, which is a really interesting way to do that. Not only it puts the power directly into those ranchers' hands. They're not fighting for slots. They're not being limited to getting slots. And they're able to reap the reward of being a processing facility as well, a shared processing facility. So we use a couple different facilities across the state that are family owned and USDA certified.
Do you find, what is the typical customer that you are having success with, and what are they buying? Do you guys sell quarters and halves and things like that, or is it mostly boxed beef? How does that work for most people?
Families. And that's what I'm most proud of, is our customer is typically a member of a family, a mother or a father of a family, and who's hoping to feed their kids healthy food. And we do buy the cut, we do pre-curated boxes, and we also do halves, wholes, and quarter beefs. So we try and give the producer and the consumer as much optionality as they would like. The majority of our business at the moment is by the cut. Just yesterday, we did 20 orders delivered to families all across Bozeman, and they were all mixed boxes by the cut, everything. There was one box that had almost every single one of our product segments in it, which was really neat to see. But we do offer halves, wholes, and quarters as well for people who are interested in stocking a freezer. Yeah. And as I mentioned, our primary customer is family segments, and we're really proud of that fact.
What is the most commonly ordered thing for you guys?
Oh, organic grass-finished beef, followed very closely by bison. And for those who enjoy it, honey. We sell a lot of honey. We operated a couple of farmers markets in the summer. Actually, the farmers market season is just about to start for us. Our first market will be June 5th in Big Sky. We do a market here in Big Sky. We do one in Bozeman. We also do one in Livingston. And you'll see different top-selling products from different segments, but it's almost always grass-fed and grass-finished organic beef, which is really neat. We sell a lot of grass-fed and grass-finished bison, and we sell a lot of raw honey.
What is the goal of the thing, is to get more producers into this RegenMarket, or what's the long-term goal for you guys?
Yeah, I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but I'd love to elaborate on it. The long-term goal is to build regional hubs across the United States. So I would love RegenMarket, our Bozeman and Big Sky location, to serve the Mountain West and to connect producers from the Mountain West with consumers in the Mountain West. And then I'd really love to go to the Northeast and the Southeast and the Western coast and be able to build these hubs where people have a connection to their food, where if someone wants to go out and see, the ranch that they're buying their food from, it's not a plane ride away, it's a car ride away, where they can go and look at it and see it and meet the rancher and feel connected to that product and understand that when they spend their food dollars, it has an impact on an individual's life, a member of their community's life. That's really important to us. Farmers and ranchers, their payment structure is different than the average Americans. They're not getting a check in the mail every 2 weeks, right? They get paid 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 times if they're lucky, times a year for the most part. And that That's a big part of why we started this business, was to help alleviate some stress on the ranchers, on the producers, and to let people feel like they have a real connection to the folks who are raising their food. If I can elaborate on the payment structure, we operate something called a credit membership model. So we ask our members to contribute $40 or $80 a month. It's not a payment. We use it as a credit. So we take that money every month. We buy food. We buy product from our ranchers. So they get a monthly check from us that helps subsidize their income. And then when our customers come back to the website, that $40 or $80 is treated as credit. So they're able to shop with it. But this way, they've made a commitment a month to not only shop locally, to shop healthy food, but they are also helping to create a regular income stream for members of their community who are raising this food product.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you, as far as the different products, like you said, you mentioned you have Alaskan salmon, I think you said. How does that work? Why are they, obviously shipping from Alaska is different. Obviously there's not salmon in Montana. I don't think there are. I don't know what's in the creeks there, but I assume the salmon aren't there. So what are your thoughts on, because shipping is an issue. If you're shipping from Montana down to Florida, it's more expensive. Obviously it'd make more sense to have a regional producer there to do that. What are the thoughts on shipping?
Shipping it's a part of our business that I'd really like to minimize. The salmon that we buy from Alaska it's caught in Bristol Bay. It's wild caught salmon. It's caught by a family from Billings. They go up, it's called Kviak Fish Co. They go up and live in Graveyard Point, Alaska. Over the summer, they fish there for a number of months, and they bring all the fish back to Billings, and we buy from them directly. The salmon itself, while it's wild caught, it's hard to describe a fishery necessarily as 100% regenerative, but wild caught fish is as close as you can get for us. And supporting, again, another Montana family is why we do it. And also, I think salmon's a great source of omega-3s, and people love to have a fish product in their diet. But shipping it's a dirty part of the trade that I really like to minimize. We want to be as environmentally focused as we possibly can. For the time being, shipping is a necessity of our business, and it's one we have to do. And as we grow, I hope to open these regional hubs, shift away from that, and minimize at least food that has to go on an airplane. We do offer local pickup here in Bozeman at the farmers markets at our physical location, and we do a coordinated delivery route as well to try and minimize how much food has to go in a box. But for the time being, it's a necessary evil, and we hope to transition away from it as soon as we can.
Yeah, I get a lot of different ranchers, and you guys have sent me some. I remember maybe a month or so ago, and it was quite good. I remember, and I can't remember exactly what but I think I had some pork as well, which I was pretty impressed with. But it's one of those things where every once in a while, and if you ship something out, UPS fails to deliver it, or whoever the carriers fails to deliver it on time, and you like to get it within 2 days. But it's funny. I had one that showed up, and it was supposed to be there on a Wednesday. It didn't show up till the following Monday. So it was an additional 5 days. And I got it, and it was still cold, and I ate it, and it was still fine because it's vacuum sealed. And so I think it helps to mitigate some of that. But it's obviously got to be a frustration when you don't know for sure if you can get your product, which is very time sensitive to location. How often is that an issue that you find that you have to lose? Because a lot of people, if it shows up a week later, you're going to tell them, don't eat this because it's a problem, right?
To minimize shipping loss, we choose to ship only on Mondays. So every order placed, you have up till Sunday at 5 p.m. to place your order. We ship and deliver all of our boxes on Monday. We do UPS 3-day select to give the box a full 5 work days to get to your house, so we can minimize the risk of it sitting in a facility over a weekend, et cetera. With that strategy, we've actually had terrifically low loss rates, which I'm very thankful for. Obviously, we'd love to offer shipping and delivery every day. That'd be a great convenience, but it's the nature of the product that we sell. That's just not the best way to do it at the time being. There are some companies, larger companies, who have better fulfillment opportunities and availabilities. But for us, we found that we're hyper successful in sending food UPS 3-day.
What about finishing? Because not finishing, the processing, particularly the hanging time, the dry aging, the wet aging. Do you guys get into that? Is it something somebody can say, hey, like a lot of people prefer, and personally, I found that when it's like you have a whole carcass that's hung for 3 weeks, you get this sort of unique dry aging that occurs, and the flavor profile might be improved. Is there something, how do you guys deal with that? Or is it just whatever the processing facility has?
We hang all the animals for 2 weeks. They dry hang for 2 weeks. We don't do there's more formal dry aging processes. We don't do them at the time being. It's something we're exploring right now to see if we want to offer a select dry aged beef product. But everything, we hang all the carcasses for a number of weeks. And to let blood flow and to get that dry age that people enjoy.
Yeah, that's something, and I think that in my understanding, and I'm not certainly not a rancher or a meat processor, but my understanding is if you can do that, if you can hang them for 2-3 weeks, they're going to taste better. Whereas some of these large commercial 6,000 animals a day facilities, kill facilities, they don't have room, and so they'll hang for maybe 4 or 5 days, and then they got to get it out of there, and so you may lose out on some of that. Is that fair to say?
There's facilities different in size, different hang times, different weights. The primary facility we're using for our beef, they do about 20, 30 head a day. So it's much smaller than one of those larger facilities. More attention can be paid to those carcasses to make sure they're hanging for the right amount of time. And with grass-fed, grass-finished animals, those animals often come in lighter and leaner, like we talked about, than some more conventionally raised animals. So it can really, the hang time can vary from animal to animal, but from ranch to ranch, you normally have consistent hang times across the board for our different producers.
What is interesting, I was in Tennessee, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago at this thing called, I think we called it meat stock or something like that, a play on Woodstock. And they had a rancher that drove from Florida up to Tennessee to deliver some, and he's a regenerative style rancher. And then he had to go back home because literally vegan activists were attacking his farm, cutting fences to let his animals out. And to me, it's like, that's the least person you should go after. But it's a small guy he's an old guy that can't defend himself basically. He's not like a major facility. And the fact that they're attacking that to me is just really, it speaks volumes to the evil that these people want to. What are your thoughts on the push for ending meat, for taking it out of the diet, minimizing it, telling our kids we can just eat soybeans and it's just as good? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I saw your post about that rancher the other day. I was pretty shocked by it. To strike against an independent American farmer is just an odd choice in my mind. These are people who work hard every day. They're not mega corporations who don't have your best interest at heart. Even if you have a difference of opinion with someone, that kind of action I don't think is ever called for. I think you can speak to the nutrient density, the bioavailability of meat better than I can, for sure. But from what I've read and what I've learned, meat is one of the most bioavailable food products there is on this planet. And to take that away, to take the option away from people to be able to consume that, I think is crazy. I think the United States of America was built on optionality. The right to choose, the ability to make your own decision is what makes this country so great. And it certainly, in my opinion, would be silly to take away a food that's so rich in vitamins, minerals, protein, and so bioavailable to us. It's an evolutionary food that we were raised on and that helped shape the human mind and body. And I hope it's one that's here to stay for a long time.
Let me ask you about, this is a topic that I get a lot of interesting feedback on. There's something called the beef checkoff, which you probably are aware of. I don't know if the ranchers are paying for it. Any cattle rancher that goes to a processor or goes to a feedlot or whatever, sells an animal, is paying into that. And some people have been critical, saying that they're not really doing much to promote beef. Do you find that, let me ask you about this, is the beef checkoff providing assistance to or marketing for or promoting or facilitating regenerative style beef, or is it all commodity? Do you get any sense on how that's distributed?
I'm not super familiar. I know I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I'm not super familiar with it having any specific impact on regenerative agriculture. No. And again, I think the best way that I've seen, at least, to bring awareness or attention to a topic is with consumer dollars. And I think the American consumer has the choice to bring awareness of products and movements they care about by supporting them. So the best cause to support regenerative agriculture, I think, is by getting everyday people to wake up and look at what we can do for our planet, what we can do for our bodies, and spend money that support producers who are raising those products for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people you don't get to vote once every 4 years in a presidential election. You get to vote every single day. Every time you spend a nickel, you're either giving money and thus power to somebody and not providing someone else. So if you want to see a particular change, you've got to either stop supporting one group and support another group. And every time you give money to these sort of I don't know, Coca-Cola and all these giant conglomerates, they just get more powerful and they have more control over the whole food system. And I think that's a concern, a legitimate concern that I have, and I think most people maybe should consider having. What else you want to share? If there's some other topic you want to address.
No, I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed having the floor to talk a lot about the importance of regenerative agriculture here today. I want to make sure that I'm not being degrading to conventional producers as well. Ranching and farming in America is incredibly difficult. And I support all of our ranchers and farmers. I appreciate all the hard work they do. If I can delve into why we here at RegenMarket find regenerative agriculture to be so important for a moment, it's really the environmental impact that we've seen these practices have. Causes that are close to my heart specifically involve water infiltration and the reducing soil erosion. If you think about the use of synthetic inputs on cropland, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, etc. As soil erodes, those chemicals run off into our waterways, whether it's our drinking water, whether it's our American estuaries, so be it. These harmful toxic chemicals run off into water, and they're poisonous to people. They're poisonous to animals. So a big part of regenerative agriculture for me is removing these synthetic inputs from the landscape so that we don't have these water runoff issues that we're dealing with. And carbon sequestration, we mentioned a little bit earlier, carbon credits, carbon sequestration is a big part of regenerative agriculture as well. 95% of life on land lives below our feet within the soil. It's a lot of microbiome, tons of microorganisms. And by feeding this microbiology, by raising healthy plant life, we're able to sequester carbon into the ground. Carbon sequestration is a major issue for people all around the country, and to be able to use our food system, to use our terrestrial grasslands. Over 52% of the land in the United States is agricultural land. 27% of that is rangeland and pasture land. To be able to use those landscapes not only to foster healthy food, but to sequester carbon, to preserve our waterways, I think it's an incredible use of time, effort, and money. So that's why we're so passionate about regenerative agriculture, because it really does make a difference for people in terms of the food they're eating, and farmers in terms of the way we're able to support our economy and our local members of our community, and then our planet in terms of keeping waterways clean, sequestering carbon, and promoting healthy and comfortable lifestyles for animals. I'm an animal lover. I'm an animal eater, and it brings me a great sense of calm to know that I'm supporting a wonderful life for a creature that's going to help support a wonderful life for me.
One thing that I think most people may not understand, or because it doesn't always have to be an all or nothing thing. There's a lot, as you know, there's 700,000 ranches in the United States, something along those lines. And most of them are small head, 50 head of cattle, mom and pop family farms. You've got obviously the mega farms. You've got a few of those out there that a lot of the animals end up in. Is it possible that, let's say, the cow-calf operation, where they're going to just basically keep the animals till the time of weaning, and then they send them off to be finished somewhere else, maybe in a background stocking area? Is it possible for someone to viably financially do a cow-calf operation, even though they're not going to sell the meat, they're going to sell it in a commodity, to do it in a regenerative fashion and be viable? Is that a viable possibility? There's this kind of a hybrid model some people think might be even reasonable for some people.
I really like the point you made about it. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. A step in the right direction is a step in the right direction, and making positive change, big or small, is positive change, and that's incredible. So I really like to encourage people to know that the barriers to entry can be high, but it doesn't mean you don't have to enter. You can take one step, to put one foot in front of the other, and see how it feels. But yeah, cow-calf operations, it's possible to do things different than the conventional model. We have a cow-calf operation here in Montana that we work with. They sell all their animals to one of our grass-fed, grass-finished operations. So those cow-calves, grass-fed, grass-finished through that point in their life, then they come to our grass-fed, grass-finished areas where we finish those cows on grass, and then we take them to our local processor. They're a part of that regenerative system. Doesn't mean that they had to go all the way through on their property, but they're a part of a system that fosters those principles.
They're going to sell to somebody. They're going to raise a cow up 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it is, and then transfer it. Does it make more financial sense for them to sell to you guys or the commodity market? How can you compete with the commodity guys?
The beef market is tricky, especially right now. Beef can at the times be more valuable on the rail than it is by the cut in the market we're seeing right now. But yes, with the return we're able to give back to our producers, we are competitive to the commodity market for sure. Those cow-calf operations can sell to our producer partners who finish on grass, and the market and the revenue flows downstream. And that's something we pride ourselves on. Like I talked a little bit about earlier, getting that 14 cents, that other 86 cents that doesn't go to the producer, getting that money back in their hands, making sure that they get to reap the reward of the time, the effort, and the care they put into an animal's life.
So that cow calf gets a share of the consumer dollar. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's our goal, is by selling through our network, the value we're able to drive through the product to the consumer is able to get shared back down the line to our producer partners.
Yeah, that seems like a good strategy to, like I said, because some people just don't have the facility. They don't want to start up a direct-to-consumer market. If all they want to do is run their 50 cows on their grass, and you say, "Hey, let's move them every day or two," and
it's not as easy as it sounds, for sure. And we want, as I said earlier, we support ranchers and farmers all across America doing whatever they can do to raise a healthy food product. And we want everyone to feel like they can make a step in the right direction. They're not being criticized for foundations built 40 years before them, 2 generations before them, 3 generations before them, when people didn't know the harmful effects of fertilizer. People didn't know. Even today, you have a multi-generation rancher who's been ranching for 70 years. He's just learning about all this stuff. He or she is just learning about all this stuff. It doesn't mean that they have to tonight change everything they've ever done. But if they're willing to take a step forward, we're more than willing to be a part of that process for them.
yeah, so there's an appropriate question for one of our members here asking website. Where do they go? How do they find out more? I'm sure you've got some. You can go to a website and learn all about this stuff in more detail. Where do people go for that?
Yeah, so www.RegenMarket.com. You can go shop all of our products there. There's a membership section, our story section, and our producer section. You can go and read about each and every single one of our producers. We've shot short videos for most of them, so you can meet the ranchers, see the property. But that's www.RegenMarket.com, 20% off to anyone who signs up. And we have a 30-day free trial. You click that, add that to your cart, add all the products you want to your cart. We'll ship, drop off wherever you are. You can try the products, let us know how you feel, let us know what you think. And we'd love to, and we'd appreciate all your support.
Does your stock wax and wane based on the season, or are you guys pretty much able to ship 52 weeks out of the year? Is there a period of time when we're out of stock on this and that? And are you big enough to where you can ship all the time?
With every product except poultry, at the moment, we are 52 weeks, we can ship everything. Poultry in Montana is a particularly hard product because there's not a USDA processing facility in our state. So that means poultry cannot leave the state of Montana. It's a local only product here. We're working with a few facilities to try and make a new USDA option for poultry. But at the time being, poultry is the only seasonal product we carry. Outside of that, everything else is 52 weeks a year, ready to go.
All right. Awesome stuff. Zan, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for sharing your story and sharing your passion. Like I said, in my view, we got to support ranchers, and these guys are good ones to support. And that's how we protect our food supply, because the forces be want to centralize everything and then control it to the point where we don't have a say in what we eat. So thanks for doing what you're doing. Appreciate it, man.
Dr. Baker, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate the platform you've offered to people like me to share our story. And I'm super excited to see you dunk by 60. I'm following along, and I'm excited to see it for sure.
Yeah, we'll get there. I got to lose a little bit of weight. Once I get down to about 240, I'll be able to do it. I'm pretty confident. So anyway, awesome, man. Thanks a bunch.